Hey,
Hello,
Gene.
hello.
Gene, long time. Well, not really.
Uh,
We talk all the
we
time,
talk
but
all the time, but a long time since we've done the Bioactive Nexus. It's
that's
been
right.
like about a month. Oh my
So,
gosh, we've been so busy.
both of us this month, you were traveling like 3 weeks in a
Oh
row,
yeah,
man.
I was at the what used to be called Supply Side East is now called Supply
Yeah,
Side Connect. That was in New Jersey. Then I
right.
went down to see a nutraceutical, a contract manufacturer of chocolates that do nutraceuticals in them. I was there in Sarasota, Florida for that. And then I went to the National Animal Supplement Council conference that was in Columbus, Ohio. So
hmm
yeah, 1 week after another. That was an unusual amount of travel in 1 month, but all very interesting things. Uh, Yours was extraordinarily busy. I'm going to go
Oh,
and say
yeah.
it was busier than mine because I've been where you were and I know what that's like. And you were in the
Yeah.
midst of moving. Oh my
Uh,
gosh, I hate
moving.
moving.
It's one of those life things it's so much work. I think I hit 18,000 steps one day, you
Oh,
know.
I have no doubt that you did.
Yeah, yeah. It was well over 100,000 steps that week trying to get moved. It was the end of last month, beginning of April. Of course, then you're getting settled in and all that. Plus, other exciting things for me was working with my branding agency and getting my personal brand launched with my
I
new
saw
website
that.
and everything.
Yeah, it
So
looks
if you
great.
haven't, yeah, thanks, man. And all the new branding, new logos, all that. So if you haven't been there yet, go check it out. It's at drbillclark.life and you'll see where I'm pivoting in a big way. And then also the launch of officially of NutriSelect AI, which is a super exciting project. And Gene, you're involved in that. You're on the
Sure.
advisory board. So we're raising capital for that pre-seed and actively doing that. But it looks it's going to really be a huge thing for the industry. It's going to, especially for consumers. And again, this is a bio insight series episode today, so this is really geared towards consumers. So you guys are going to love this. And then what else did I have going on? I had that, and then I know there were some other things there, but
You know what?
um,
It drives out of your mind when you're in the midst of moving. It's just so all encompassing. It takes
yeah.
over everything. You know.
Cool thing though, the new place we're in actually has a half-size Olympic-size pool. 25-meter
Nice.
pool. So I am back into swimming every week, which is I'm loving here. So,
Awesome.
which is a good segue into our topic today because we're going to talk about sexual dysfunction and supplements.
Hmm.
And again, this is for the Bioactive Insight. Anyway, but the reason I say that, Gene, is because it's just like anything else. It's the holy trinity here. You got to eat right, you got to exercise, and certainly supplements and a spiritual practice. So all the things work together. Even these ingredients we're going to talk about today were actually better when people had an exercise regimen with, especially these types
Always.
of ingredients. Always. So what if you're not doing that, then you want to have better impact with your supplements. You definitely want to incorporate these things into your lifestyle, for sure.
Yes, that makes sense. So
So,
this,
so Gene, you wrote a chapter about this in a textbook sometime back,
yeah,
didn't you?
the textbook was called "Nutraceuticals and Functional Foods in Human Health and Disease Prevention," and I was invited at the time to write a textbook chapter on sexual dysfunction and nutraceutical therapy. An examination of human research. And to me, that was the critical part because you can always see studies done that are in vitro or they're animal studies. But, human sexuality is such a highly individualized thing. And
Yeah.
to, so study, unless you've got studies on humans and on the right kind of group of humans, you don't know for sure how something's going to work. And even if you use something, and there has been a study, again, it's highly individualized. One thing works well for somebody Doesn't
Yeah.
always work as well for somebody else, but that's the value of the research, is you get an idea of what the preponderance of people who use it are likely to experience. And
That's
so,
good. That's
yeah.
an excellent point, man, because that's true for anything, though. It's you have to kind of fine tune a little bit what's going to work for you. You know, it's not a one size fits all, right?
No, it definitely isn't. And I think a good place, Bill, to start this out is when we talk about sexual dysfunction, you know,
What
what
is
exactly
that?
does that mean, right?
Exactly.
And you know, sexual dysfunction can be different things. Certainly, the most classic sexual dysfunction that most people are aware of is ED, or erectile dysfunction. Okay,
That's right.
the name of which you don't need to describe what that is. Everybody knows what that is. But you know, having a low libido, low sex drive,
Right.
orgasmic disorders. There's a number of different things that are classified as sexual dysfunction, and it is a lot more prevalent than I think a lot of people are aware of. In fact, you know, based on previous research, um, you know, taking a look at different countries and experts from multidisciplinary areas of science, putting all the data together, results indicate that sexual dysfunction, well, first of all, no big surprise, its prevalence increases as men and women
As
age,
age,
but
absolutely.
about 40 to 45% of adult women and 20 to 30% of adult
That's
men
right.
have at least one sexual dysfunction. So it's something that, again, is not at all uncommon. And that's one major source. But if you look at other sources, they're remarkably similar. Other sources, 43% of women, 31% of men. So it's right there. And to our earlier point, it's more likely to exist in men and women with poor physical and emotional health, which is, again,
Sure.
why having exercise and maybe a good spiritual practice can help you
Yeah.
in this kind of situation, as in most situations in life.
And that's true. So I mean, it helps you move through those things. And we're talking about. I mean, if you're living a stressful life, you're really stressed out, and if you get away from exercising, which has happened to me periodically, not so much over the last 2 3 decades since I've been doing it or so,
Mm-hmm.
but for 4 decades maybe, a long time.
Indeed.
You do have periods because you have life changes where it gets you off your routine, right? So you just have to find a new routine, get back into it, and but for sure, there's no question about it. In my own experience, that there's a big difference when you're happier and you're exercises boost testosterone levels, right?
Absolutely.
And not to mention those endorphins too, right? Which the feel
Those
good.
feel good chemicals in your body that
Yeah,
make
exactly.
you
Yeah,
feel like you want to be happy and do happy things.
that's right. so. So again, it's a holistic approach. That's kind of our take-home message here, guys. So you want to holistically approach this, live that holy trinity, man. That's what you want to do. And again, now we'll talk about some of the ingredients that are pretty popular that people know about. But we'll talk about we'll start into that gene, and then we'll go through it by class of types of compounds here, botanicals, amino
Sure,
acids,
sure.
etc., and go from there.
So I think let's start with amino acids.
Yeah.
um, so when I think of sort of the amino acids that are probably most well known for their role in sexual health, I'm going to say D-aspartic acid,
Yeah.
and as well as arginine and citrulline. But I want to mention arginine and citrulline first. And when you talk about those two, you have to understand the role that they play. So in our body is something called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide, not to be confused with what your dentist gives you if you're there in the dentist's office. Not the same thing. Um,
No.
but 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 nitric
Laughing gas.
oxide is something that helps with circulation. Okay, and it can be systemic circulation, something good for your cardiovascular system, or it can be more of a localized circulation in the genital region. So if you have an improvement in that circulation. And if you're a man with erectile dysfunction, if you've got more nitric oxide being released, helping with circulation, it's more likely you're going to be able to achieve and maintain an erection than if you don't have enough. And while a woman isn't necessarily concerned with achieving an erection per se, getting a flow of blood to that region is obviously going to be beneficial for sexual health again. And there are studies on the use of arginine and on the use of citrulline, these two amino acids. Arginine directly, pretty directly, it's in that line, will convert to nitric oxide, whereas citrulline can convert to arginine and then to nitric oxide. So you may think arginine's the way to go, but actually citrulline's a better choice, and here's why. Your body makes arginine, okay? And if you take a lot of arginine supplements, your body will start to compensate and say, oh, I'm getting plenty of arginine from an external source. I don't need to make as much. So let's say your arginine levels were here, and you took arginine, now they're up here. That's great. Now you're making nitric oxide. But your body goes, oh, look, I'm getting plenty. And it starts to decrease. So the arginine you're taking, you end up ultimately at close to a baseline of kind of where you started if you do that. But if you take citrulline, the citrulline can actually help make arginine and make up nitric oxide. And in some research, you can actually have better arginine levels by taking citrulline. And it's good for the nitric oxide. And the doses used range between 1.5 grams and 3 grams a day. And so it's a pretty safe and effective means of helping to increase your nitric oxide levels. So if you're a man who wants a little extra help there for circulation, or a woman who's looking to increase blood flow to that region, it's something that can be very beneficial and good for your cardiovascular system at the same time.
Well, that's why it's in a lot of sports products as well, pre-workout, post-workout, because it's for workout you want to get blood flow for your lifting weights more, to increase your blood flow to those regions as you're exercising those muscles, So
right.
It's awesome for that. Now, aspartic acid has been shown to increase serum testosterone, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. So
and the dose used was a strange dose. It was 3.12 grams. So that's 3,120 milligrams.
20 milligrams.
It's funny. Sometimes I see supplements that'll just do 3 grams because they're like, who cares about the 120 milligrams? But the fact is, look, the research was done at 3.12 grams. So if you're going to do it, use 3.12 grams or slightly more. But that is what was shown in subjects to be beneficial at increasing testosterone levels. And again, the results were statistically significant. And also luteinizing hormone, another hormone that plays a role in this whole process. So there are other supplements that again can affect testosterone, which we'll talk about, but that is certainly one of them. And so that, for the purposes of this discussion, I think that's enough about amino acids. And perhaps next we want to jump into,
botanicals.
Botanicals, yes. Some of our favorite discussions.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the ones that have been around for a while, and then we'll get into those components or ingredients that have new research actually recently.
Yes, we will do that too.
It was awesome.
What would you like to start with?
We'll start with fenugreek. Okay?
Yeah, let's start with fenugreek.
Which is traditionally from Ayurvedic medicine, is that correct?
Yeah. It is, yes, correct.
And its applications are to help with sexual arousal, low estradiol, and low T, or low testosterone as well.
That's right. And it's been beneficial just for sexual satisfaction in men and women and sexual arousal in women. And so basically, fenugreek contains some interesting compounds that seems to have some interesting roles to play. One of the roles that it plays is that there are compounds that bind with estrogen. And if you can get those compounds to unbind, so now you have what we call free testosterone.
Right.
It's not bound to something. That testosterone is available for use right now. When it's bound up with something, it's not immediately available to use. Your body has to unbind it first. And a number of the studies done on fenugreek extracts, it's been shown to help unbind that testosterone. Now it's available and it can be used right away. Now
and
is
that the unbinding of SHBG we're talking about?
Yeah, sex hormone binding
globulin. Yeah.
And so
weird name. Yeah.
Yeah. So that helps. And now there is some research that suggests that it also just helps with total testosterone, which honestly has become to be understood as more important, because if you have total testosterone that's higher, that's also going to mean you have higher free testosterone too.
Yeah.
But there's been a number of studies that have been done, and those studies have been done in both men and women. So that's important to understand, and good for that libido in men and women. So that's one of the things that you can do. And the doses, the doses have ranged a little bit, but in general, they're somewhere around the 300 milligram range if you're doing like one of the branded materials like Testofen, for example. Somewhere around that 300 milligram range has been shown to have some effectiveness in improving some of these, sexual thoughts, sexual arousal, sexual behavior, orgasm.
Right. Libido.
All of those things. Yeah.
Is what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Testofen is a branded one they did studies for men, and then Libifem was for women.
They were calling it Lebifem for a while. I don't know if they still are, but
I don't know.
It's I guess for libido and feminine, whatever. It's basically the same stuff, just sort of rebranded. Now, it's not the only material out there. There's another one called TestoSurge,
right?
That it was also done and similarly showed these increases in, sexual parameters. So that's really good. And it's been, again, a fairly safe supplement to use. So that's one of the ones to, seriously consider if you are looking for that.
Cool. And then we have Uricoma longifolia.
That's right. Long Jack, as it's sometimes called.
Right, that's the common name.
Or Tonkat Ali.
Which comes from Asia, right?
Yes, it does. And it means, funny, an actual translation means Ali's walking stick, which is a sort of a nod to the effect that it has.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
And again, this one's focused on low T or low testosterone and sexual satisfaction for men and women. So
And by the way, just as a point of reference here, folks, if anybody's thinking, but if it's a woman, you don't want to increase testosterone because testosterone is something you want.
That's a good point.
Don't worry. You're not going to get anywhere near enough testosterone for a woman to start growing a mustache or anything like that. It's just bumps it up a little bit because part of a woman's sexual biochemistry is increasing testosterone, and that's what helps her to have a sex drive. So yes, it's part of, men have estrogen and women have testosterone.
We have all the hormones, actually. That's right. Yeah.
And so, but you do need a little more testosterone, whether you're a man or a woman, if you're looking at sexual activity. So there's different materials out there. There have been Fista or LJ100. Fista is like over in Europe, and LJ100 is in America. It's exactly the same stuff. And it's been shown to be very, very effective at ranging generally between 100 and 200 milligrams of the extract, although there have been studies at higher doses. But it, as high as 600 even. But it has been found in a number of clinical studies to have a range of extremely positive effects with regard to sexual health. A libido, it's been shown to be really good. Like in one study, you had sexual libido increased by like 14%, which is pretty meaningful. And you even had improvements in sperm motility, semen volume, things like that. So really a sexual health related, botanical extract.
And there's quite a few studies on it, actually.
Yeah, there have
I
been.
don't know if there's any recent ones on it, but
there was a very recent one. I didn't include it in my notes because it's so recent. But I can tell people that there are like 10 clinical studies at least that have been done on this stuff. So somebody who's looking for something of that nature, that is a good one. Uricoma longifolia, in the U.S., LJ100 is the branded extract that has had some good research on it and good to look at. So yeah, that's a good option.
And then yohimbine.
Okay, so yohimbe bark, or yohimbine, which is the alkaloid, the compound in yohimbe bark that actually has the effect. Now, there is yohimbine hydrochloride, which is a synthetic compound, which has similar effects.
And apparently somebody likes us talking about this.
Yes, my dog is very excited about the discussion, so she thought she'd bark to show her support.
It's like, where's my stick? Throw me the stick.
That's right. That one barking is my Australian cattle dog, Daisy. She's actually a mix. And she's very, very, very excited about a lot of different things. And there she goes. It's right on cue. But the thing about yohimbe is, it's one of those things that you can take on the short term without having to take it regularly and having some, some pretty good effects. And around 15 milligrams a day, somewhere in that range, it's been shown to have some positive effects as high as 30 milligrams. And there's a number of studies. But there are some potential adverse effects where you might be looking at, if you're a person who has tachycardia or anxiety or agitation, hypertension, those kind of things, you want to be a little careful because the yohimbine could be, could exacerbate that in some instances. So I would use that as more on an as-needed basis as opposed to a regular supplement you take on a daily basis. Everything we've talked about previously, you can take on a daily basis just to help put you in a place that when you're ready for sexual activity, you're ready. Whereas yohimbine, I would take more on an as-needed basis.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, it's for ED and orgasmic dysfunction for men, and then for women, sexual arousal. So it's funny. I think it's changed, Gene, but it used to be years ago. It was all these ingredients were just talked about for men, and they weren't talked about for women, right? But now we've kind of more and more discussion of that.
And what's really interesting, guys like us who have been in the industry for a while may remember. I certainly remember. I used to work for a company that had what I think was probably the first sexual health product for women. But hold on. Okay. But this was back in, I want to say, the 90s, maybe.
Yeah.
And it had no success in the market at all. Not because it didn't work, because women wouldn't try it in the first instance.
Right.
They was too embarrassed to try it.
Yeah, it was a marketing positioning thing because these things were traditionally
the women were like, I don't want to indicate that this is something that I want. Now women are different. They feel like they're not embarrassed by that. They're like, why should I be any more embarrassed about that than men? And they're absolutely right. And
you're absolutely right. Exactly.
And now you're seeing some of these products pop up more and more, and women are using these, and that's a great thing.
It is. I agree, and I wanted to call that out because I think that's really important. That all these ingredients, decades of research actually, and both for men and women. But there are more studies being done for women. Again, I think it is just really the way it was positioned in the market at the time, and that's kind of evolved for sure. Just like our industry has evolved with the science and all of that.
That's right.
So, and I'd say culturally more accepted.
And part of it is, I think, the generation. I think the women at the time
that too.
Then were more baby boomers, our generation. Yeah. And now you have people who are different, whether they're Gen Xers or millennials or whatever they are.
Yeah.
They're like much more comfortable with their own sexuality, and
Well, you and I are the baby boomers, but we're different. We're not like the typical baby boomers.
no, we're not. We're not the typical.
But my wife is Gen X, so.
Oh, you cradle robber, you.
Yeah. This is why I have this youthful excitement in the field, because I have a great lifestyle, man. Hey,
that's it, baby.
And I take a lot of these. I take a lot of these things we're talking about.
Excellent.
So let's talk about hormone modulators.
Hormones,
right?
and you know what? Most people are going to be surprised when I tell them what the first hormone is. But you know what I'm going to say? Vitamin D. And you're like, wait a minute. Vitamin D is not a hormone. No. It's a vitamin. Yes, it is. And it's a hormone too. Structurally,
yes,
its structure is that of a hormone, and it has
that base structure.
Yeah. So, that's the thing about vitamin D, is it does have this role to play, hormonal as well as a role as a vitamin. Yeah. And what's really interesting is vitamin D has a role to play with regard to testosterone production. And what's really interesting, now that we know that so many people are vitamin D deficient or insufficient,
right?
We see that that deficiency is impacting testosterone levels. So one of my favorite studies, when you talk about an odd amount of a nutraceutical to be used, there was an interesting study in which men who were vitamin D deficient and they were overweight, but undergoing a weight reduction program, took, wait for it, 3,332 units of vitamin D daily. Whatever. Somebody chose an odd number. Why don't they just round it up to, 3,400?
Why? Right. Why 3,332? That's weird.
It's weird. But they did it. It was a nice randomized placebo-controlled study, and they found that, not surprisingly, taking the vitamin D helped get rid of their vitamin D deficiency, but it also substantially increased their testosterone levels. So they found a really, and these were real statistically significant differences. And so it was like, wow, this actually can work to improve testosterone levels. If you're a man and you have vitamin D deficiency, presumably for women too, it can help your testosterone levels. There's more than one study on that.
Do you know the latest stat on vitamin D deficiency? I don't really know.
It has changed a little bit over time. Yeah. And it's funny because I just wrote about it not too long ago, and it's escaping me the exact number, but it's still pretty darn high. You still have something like, I want to say somewhere between 20 to 30% of people who are vitamin D deficient, and a higher amount, like 40%, that are insufficient. So it's better. It used to be like 40% that were deficient and 70 some odd percent that were insufficient. So we've made an improvement on that because now more doctors are doing vitamin D tests, more people are aware of it, more people are taking it. Yeah. But there's still a lot of people who are vitamin D deficient, and it makes a big, big difference.
Well, and if you're living it helps if you live in a sunny climate.
It does. Question. If you live in a sunny climate and you get outdoors, if you live in a sunny climate and you stay in the air conditioning all day, it doesn't help too much. But if you get a little bit of sun, that will make a big difference, since the sun will convert a form of cholesterol in our skin into vitamin D.
So regardless, vitamin D is an important, obviously, vitamin, or
it is
for lots of things. So, but especially if you're already deficient, if you know you are, it's certainly going to help in this area as well.
That's right. Now, the next hormone is more recognized as a hormone, and that's DHEA, which is a hormone that I like to. First of all, what it stands for is dehydroepiandrosterone, which is why we just say DHEA. It's easier.
Right. It's easier.
It's sometimes thought of as a weaker hormone or just a pro-hormone, meaning your body can take it and convert it to something else. It can convert it into testosterone. It can convert
because it has that
estrogen.
base chemical skeletal structure of
That's
the
right.
hormones.
It's a good starting place. It's like having a strange analogy. It's like having a cheese pizza. You could put pepperoni on it. You could put sausage on it. You could put vegetables on it. You can make it a different kind. But
That's
you got
fine.
the same
Don't put ham and pineapple though.
Some people like that. I'm not one, but some people do.
Yeah, there is. My wife is one of those actually.
Well, there you go. And so, but this hormone, because as you might imagine, and here's the cool thing, your body will take it and kind of convert it into the hormone that it wants, and so it has some value. And as we age, we have less DHEA, and so if we supplement with it, and the doses tend to range between 25 and 50 milligrams. Most of the studies for sexual health are more at 50 milligrams. But finding that it has really helped in a number of areas. For erectile function, it's been shown to help. It's been shown to help men achieve erection more effectively. It's been shown to, by taking it, helping older folks that are like, say, in the age range of 60 to 80-ish, who are given DHEA, 50 milligrams a day. It helped reestablish younger levels of that. And so when you look at those things and you look at the effects of a little increase in testosterone or estradiol, which is estrogen, it made a big difference for some of these people physically, mentally, sexually. So, it's kind of, if you think about it, it's a kind of hormone replacement therapy. You're not making enough, you start taking some. And, so it's one of the things that you could certainly consider doing. And as hormones go, it's a relatively safe hormone.
Yeah, I take 50 mgs a day per DHEA.
Yeah, so do I.
Myself.
So do I, yeah.
Definitely recommend it. Okay, so let's get into some others, and then we'll move into the new research updates, which I think are exciting.
Sure.
So Palmetto and Astaxanthin. Okay, so Palmetto for a long time has been known for prostate health, right?
It has. It has been known for prostate health, and it is, pretty fun. I mean, there's so many studies on it for prostate health. And just so everybody knows what it does, the mechanism by which Palmetto helps with prostate health is it helps reduce the conversion of testosterone to DHT, which stands for dihydrotestosterone. Why is that significant?
Right.
Because DHT in particular is implicated in prostate enlargement. So if you can reduce converting your testosterone or your T into DHT, you got a better thing. But guess what else happens if you don't reduce your testosterone as much into DHT? You maintain higher levels of testosterone. Okay? And by doing that, it has some sexual health benefits. But also, aside from that, it's been interesting because when it's been combined with astaxanthin,
which you wouldn't think to do.
Yeah,
you
wouldn't
right?
think.
Yeah.
It's been shown in some studies to actually help reduce not only the conversion of testosterone to DHT, which you would expect, but also it helps reduce the conversion of testosterone to estradiol. That's right. Testosterone can get converted to estradiol. And you know where it happens? A lot of it? It happens in adipose tissue and body fat. There's an enzyme in there called aromatase, and it converts testosterone into estradiol. So if that happens, then you have less testosterone. So again, I take both I actually take a product that contains Palmetto, and I take a separate one that contains astaxanthin for this very reason. Helps reduce that conversion. And it makes a big difference. I've seen it even in blood tests. Not taking it and taking it, you have less.
You and I are on got the same supplement stack, I think, man. I take that as well.
So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I take a lot of the things that are on our list here today. We're talking about in
Yeah,
addition
I
to
do
some other
too.
things.
And it's
Yeah.
not just and for those of you who may be wondering, what are these guys just a couple of horn dogs? No, no. It actually does a lot of other stuff for you too. Everything that we're talking about has
Oh yeah.
multiple
Multiple
benefits.
benefits.
Yeah,
Multiple
yeah.
benefits. Right.
Some in the case of side effects, sometimes those side effects are very nice ones, like side effects for benefiting sexual health.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
so
So
yeah,
so here's a weird one that probably a lot of people don't know about, and that's the Shilajit.
yeah,
And
and so you're probably saying it correct. I just call it Shilajit, but Shilajit.
I actually looked up the pronunciation
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know the
It sounds
pronunciation.
that way, but
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I actually I learned about this years ago. I have had a guy I've known, and he's actually got his doctorate in pharmacy, but he's also an Indian man with a great background in Ayurvedic medicine.
Yeah. It's
And
It's in Ayurvedic medicine. We should mention
yeah,
that. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I learned about it, and it's interesting because you think, well, what is Shilajit? Is it an herb? Not exactly. It might be described as mineral pitch.
Yeah.
It's
It
a
does have organic matter though, which is
right.
60% of it.
It's
Yeah.
basically it's a kind of an exudate of kind of a
Yeah.
blackish brownish secretion that comes from sedimentary rocks.
Right.
Specifically, ones you want to look at ones from the Himalayas. Uh, they
Yeah.
contain various organic substances, as well as minerals and other things. And at some point in time, some brave soul said, maybe this does something for you. And
Yeah,
started using it.
I always want to know who the first person was that thought, "Oh, this black oozy resin coming
Oozy
out of the
stuff coming out
rock.
of
I'm going
rocks.
to
Let's
eat
try
that.
that.
Let's try that. That must be good for me." But actually, that's a good segue to a story I got to tell you, which is pretty cool,
Yeah,
and and it's totally aligned with this, by the way. So again, the Shilajit is it's organic matter. So if it's in the sedimentary rock, it was from a long time ago, right? That
right.
was decomposed plants and that
Yeah,
kind of plant matter and stuff like that. It's got tons of components in it. And then the next biggest group of compounds are minerals and then trace minerals. So years ago, I was formulating a super antioxidant drink concentrate and I connected with this guy who had this black trace mineral complex or dirt, basically. It literally was it was from some place in New Mexico, and it was an ancient bed, prehistoric bed that was had this black dirt, and the elk would come out of the mountains and eat it. This is how they saw that. So it's the same thing. Animals were probably eating it, and then so people saw that and said, "Okay, let's try that." And of
right.
course, Ayurvedic medicine's been around for I don't know
Thousands.
thousands of years. So these sorts of things have been around a long time. But interestingly, I'll tell you a story with that. So it was rich in fulvic acid, organic acid, same
Fulvic
as
acid, yeah.
the Shilajit, right? Same thing, rich in fulvic acid. It's actually the biggest component there, but great benefits. What I was noticed from the research that I did with it is that it was like a precursor to it acted like a prebiotic, and so it selectively fed the good flora in the micro and the gut, and actually improved the gut makeup of the microbiome there, which I thought was fascinating. So I could see why animals are doing it to have a healthy GI tract or whatever. That's it's kind of innate. Nature knows the right thing to do always, it seems. But there's definitely some similarities there in terms of its benefits for sure. But
Yeah, and look, so you're saying, well, what exactly does it do? Well, it does a number of things. One of the things it does is increase testosterone.
yeah,
100 milligrams of Shilajit taken twice a day, so a total of 200 milligrams, was given to men who were called, they were oligospermic, meaning they weren't necessarily producing as much sperm. And they were infertile as a result of it. And so they gave this, and they found that it increased sperm count, it increased the mobility of the movement of sperm, it increased the sperm count significantly, and it also decreased oxidative activity in sperm, so which means it was a healthier sperm, not breaking down from oxidation so much.
Right.
And it even increased serum testosterone in those individuals by like 23%, which was pretty meaningful. So, and then there were other studies done also showing improvements in testosterone levels in the 20 some odd percent range. So, pretty cool stuff. One good material is called Primav, that's had a lot of studies done on it, but it's certainly not going to be the only one out there, but definitely one that has had good research done on it. And it ranges between, and the research has ranged between 400 milligrams a day and 500 milligrams a day.
Yeah.
Or actually be 200 milligrams a day and 500 a day.
That's right. And again, that's kind of in our new research updates is really emerging as an emerging adaptogen for testosterone and vitality. So that's what people are calling that. And like you said, there's been several new studies that talked about the things you were talking about. And then that brings us to, let's continue with that new research updates. Well, ashwagandha, again, is another Ayurvedic. It comes from a root.
And that's another one that's, listen, ashwagandha has been around for a very long time. In our industry, ashwagandha is pretty well known.
Yes.
And a lot of consumers are using ashwagandha for purposes of stress and for other reasons as well. But there is a body of research on it for sexual health. And we're talking
it's 600 milligram dose for that in those studies.
Yeah, and that was in a lot of those studies they used the KSM66 material,
right?
And they found great results in men. Again, improved sperm parameters, improved testosterone levels, highly statistically significant improvements. Now, in addition to those studies showing these good results, there has also been research in women using that same 600 milligrams a day of material, and the women showed really good parameters in sexual health. And the women, it was interesting because they looked at women anywhere from 18 to 50. So it wasn't just women that were middle-aged; it was even younger women, and they found really good results with regard to libido, orgasmic satisfaction, a variety of parameters. So, and you're thinking, well, how does that happen? How do you get a product like helps with stress, helps with this, helps with that? Well, it is an adaptogen. Adaptogens help your body to adapt to stressful situations. So if you're too high, it brings you low. If you're too low, it brings you high. It helps in normalizing. Yeah, it's a balance.
Normalizing.
Very good.
Yeah. Whatever you're deficient in certain area, and I suspect that has a lot to do with endocannabinoid receptors throughout our body systems, right? Because it's kind of a balancing of those systems because of the component you're taking. So whatever you're deficient or lower, it helps improve that area.
That's right.
That's how those adaptogens work. And again, you should have those in your supplement stack. Some sort of that. I take ashwagandha every day.
Yeah, me too.
And actually, I can attest to the KSM 66. Sometimes I take 600. I don't really need that, but I take the 300 every day, and that's actually awesome.
Yep, that's what I use as well.
Yeah.
So, it is a ashwagandha is one of my all-time favorite adaptogens for sure. So, and then now let's look at maybe a couple other, let's say, newer things.
Yeah. I'll talk about Nitrosagene. That's a trade name, right?
Yes.
And you can talk about black ginger because I know Nutriland's working on this. Which is kind of cool research coming out from that. So Nitrosagene is actually arginine. It's an inositol stabilized arginine silicate. Okay, What does that mean? Okay, it's basically an amino acid that's been stabilized, right? And so there is some clinical research. This is a newer ingredient on the market, actually clinically shown to boost nitric oxide, right? Okay, so again, that improves blood flow, vasodilation, increasing blood flow. So again, for ED, erectile dysfunction, that sort of thing is going to be really good. And then there was also some studies that it also has a rapid onset. So it's not just taking these things, but it's also the bioavailability and the effect of that. So if you think about that, one study showed they increased nitric oxide levels within 30 minutes of consumption. That's pretty fast.
That is pretty fast. So that's
and lasting up to 6 hours. That sounds something like Cialis or
it does
Viagra
kind of sound
bit,
something like that, right? Yeah.
It's a supplement version of that, I guess. I don't have the data in front of me that showed the percentage of people showing that, but it lasts up to 6 hours. So again, obviously a promising ingredient. So more research probably needs to be done on that. But
but the initial research certainly is promising and looks quite interesting.
And then also maybe some synergistic effects, combining it with like fenugreek or other things like that might be kind of interesting to look at if you're a formulator for that. And then we have Tribulus terrestris.
Now, one of the things I want everybody to understand about this one, I don't know if you remember this, Bill, but when this first hit the market, it was touted as this great testosterone enhancer.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody quoted this Bulgarian research. And then it came to pass that nobody could produce the so-called Bulgarian study that
nobody could reproduce the study, right?
They couldn't produce it. It was like somebody said that it was there, and they would discuss the results, and then when you looked for it, it wasn't in the literature, and nobody had it. It didn't really exist. So, but Tribulus certainly has been used and shown to have some improvements in sexual function, and that those improvements were they had them in animal studies as well as some human research, and they were attributing it to testosterone. But when studies have been done looking at Tribulus, doesn't really move the testosterone dial at all. It seems to work by a different mechanism. It has some legitimate benefits. But if people are telling you take this for testosterone, they are incorrect. That there's no data to demonstrate that. But it could have some benefits.
Robust evidence for that, for sure. Actually, many of the other ingredients we've talked about are much better in terms of that.
And they have good research to support it.
Yeah, really good research to support it. So, but I think it was probably one of those first botanicals or whatever in the men's sexual health back years ago, where it was like the leading thing, but there wasn't any research on any of these ingredients really that much at the time. So for sure, again, stick with probably some of the other things we've already talked about if you're looking at it. So, Gene, let's wrap up our new research updates with black ginger, because you got some exciting things to talk about with that.
Yeah. So, honestly, black ginger is, I don't want to say it's exactly the new kid on the block exactly, but because it has been used in traditional Thailand medicine for, hundreds of years or longer.
Yeah.
But in terms of what we know about it, we're seeing new data that presents itself as quite interesting. Now, with regard to sexual health, we've discovered that research has shown that if you are consuming somewheres in the let me first indicate that this black ginger, which by the way is not it's not in the same genus as our regular ginger. It's a different one entirely. It doesn't even have the same actives. It has different actives. But if you look at the raw plant, it looks kind of like ginger, except when you cut it open, it looks kind of purple or blackish inside.
Right.
The active compounds are called polymethoxyflavones. And in research that's been done, when humans have consumed somewhere between, let's say, about 5 to 10 milligrams of polymethoxyflavones, it's actually been beneficial in situations of erectile dysfunction. So they were, and they actually did studies. I don't know who was the one who sat there doing the measurements, but if you have erectile dysfunction, obviously your erection isn't, you're not gaining full erection, so it's not as long, it's not as thick. That's what you see. Well, in the studies, they found that improved penile erection states, thickness, as well as length. Now, that doesn't mean it's making you longer and thicker than you naturally are. It just means that it's helping with the full erection. And so it was found to be beneficial there. It was found to have improvements in satisfaction with intercourse. And so very, very interesting material, and also other studies showing it to be beneficial in physical fitness. I won't go into all of that, but various improvements in physical endurance and physical fitness when used in different people, and other studies showing it to be beneficial in helping to reduce body fat. So overall, a pretty cool material. Our company, the Nutriland USA, has a material we call Adaptogen. It's a black ginger extract that's standardized for 35% polymethoxyflavones, so you can use a smaller dose to get the actives that you need. And so that's a pretty cool material, and I like it, and I've been taking that myself. I was taking it to help with the reduction of visceral fat, abdominal fat, which I found it to be quite effective for.
Yeah, how do I get some of that, Gene? You got to send me some down to Mexico.
You just got to ask, buddy.
Did
you already ask and I didn't send it?
I never formally asked. Okay, I'm formally asking now.
Okay. Yeah, we have a record of that. I can't deny it.
The problem is you won't be able to ship it here, so we'll have to connect it supply side. You'll have to hit me up with.
You got it.
That's the only drawback to living in Mexico is a lot of these supplements we're talking ingredients you can't get here.
And I'm excited too, by the way, because in May we should have the complete results of another study we just did on Active.
That's great. So. Cool. All right, folks, that's kind of all the ingredients, kind of the latest research. So that's a pretty good laundry list there.
There are others.
There's some others.
These are just some of the more major ones that we thought was worth mentioning.
Yeah, I can't even think of what's like horny goat weed or something like that. Might be another one. I don't know.
There's a few others, but this is good enough.
Yeah, just the fact that the common name tells you right then is like horny goat weed. This must be something.
Right.
But again, these are the ones that really have the most research. And so I think it would be remiss if we didn't actually give some consumer advice for this. We are targeting those folks that are interested in taking these products. So again, standardization matters, whatever. So some of these branded ingredients we talked about, like LJ100 or Testofen and others, versus a generic. Same thing with Ashwagandha. You can buy a product that has just Ashwagandha in it, but you don't know the quality or standardization of that as compared to, I would say, KSM 66, because they're vertically integrated. They have their own farms. I've actually visited the farms they're manufacturing. They really control the quality.
So use a good material that's been shown in human research to be effective for the purpose intended. If you use generic versions, you may get a result, but you may not, because you don't even know if it's extracted in the right way.
Yeah.
There's a lot you don't know. So I totally agree with Bill. You want to use the right material, and you want to use the right dose.
And the right dose, that's the other thing. And it's not pixie dust, like it has ashwagandha, but then it's got like...
sprinkle it in, use the correct dose.
And it's got like 100 milligrams in there. Well, I don't care what material it is. That's not enough to support the clinical research.
I've seen it in there at 10 milligrams, 50 milligrams.
Yeah, that's not doing anything for you. And by the way, this is one reason that we're targeting NutriSelect to solve this problem here. It will give the consumers the answers they need to find the products that actually are rated for all these factors that we know as scientists. Gene and I have been doing this for decades, that know which things to look at in terms of are going to give you the benefit. So again, we're going to put that in the app we're developing. So excited about that later this year. That'll be
Absolutely.
out. We're not going to get to probably this area of ingredients right away, but we will eventually get to all the different ingredients
categories of nutraceuticals. Yeah.
And the other things, there's safety considerations, kind of along the same lines. If you're using a trusted ingredient that's branded, maybe, and again, it's got the right dosage, you're better off there. And we already said it, comprehensive lifestyle support. So this is a holistic approach, and we should mention sleep. Sleep is super important. Diet, exercise, and emotional health. So, for me, it's meditation every day. It's meditative for me to go swim in the pool and go swim a half a mile or a mile. It's a really kind of a cool experience.
It is.
Any last thoughts, Gene?
Just again, most everything we talked about are pretty safe for regular use. I would just highlight that again, yohimbe bark or yohimbine is something that you'd be better off to again limit to occasional use, or check with your doctor if you have any kinds of cardiovascular type conditions before using it. And DHEA, it's fantastic. It is a hormone. I think it'd be good to ask your doctor for regular testing of that to make sure you maintain normal ranges.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that about wraps it up for our Bioactive Insight episode on sexual dysfunction and supplements. So what's coming down the pipe? Well, we're going to have another Bioactive Breakdown series. We'll have some guests. We're trying to arrange that. But again, it's a trade show season and people are traveling. VitaFoods is coming up in EU, so in Barcelona this year. So you're going to be there. I wish I could go.
Yeah.
But I'm busy building NutriSelect right now. This is kind of my focus. So
and that is extraordinarily important.
And other exciting news, my friend, is I am preparing for my TED Talk that I'm doing later this year. So
that's awesome.
Working with an agency or group right now about that. They approached me and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing a TED Talk?" Well, yeah, it was on my bucket list. So as soon as I know where we secure a stage, it takes about 6 months. There's a whole application process. It's a pretty formal process in terms of getting accepted and all that. So, but anyway, we just don't know where they always try to find the stage that's your local community. So they're probably going to look in the Clearwater, Tampa, St. Petersburg area for me,
right.
Or kind of U.S. based for me is in that part of Florida. But you never know; it could be anywhere in the U.S. So we'll see. I'll let you guys know when we'll get a stage secured for sure. And then we'll have another Bioactive Insight. So we'll get back into a little bit more in May here. And thanks for joining us. If you guys have any questions, send them to us. And certainly when you see us post about an episode, if you got questions for the show, drop them in the comments in the post. We'd appreciate that.
All righty. Thanks, guys. All right. We'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.